Welcome to another episode of Culture FC, the weekly podcast show where we talk all things culturally significant to the beautiful game, just nothing that happens on the pitch. I am here, as always, with my two beautiful co-hosts, Alan and Louie. Today, we have cooked up another great episode, talking TAM. Don't know what it is? Listen and you'll find out. TAM is another one of MLS's funny money rules, and we talked what it is, how it's implemented, why it's implemented, and what we think of it. As always, we appreciate you listening, and we hope you give us that 5-star. Questions, comments, concerns, as always, put them in the comments section. We share our information with you. Share our podcast with your friends. Can't get enough of us? Follow us on Instagram at culturef.c. You can also follow our clothing company at Trebleware. As always, thanks for listening. Let's get into it.
That Wayne Rooney to DC United thing is pretty cool.
Very interesting, I'm excited to maybe watch a game.
I think he can still produce. It's different. Oh, well, he is 32, but I think he still has
He still has a little bit in him.
He still has some in him. I mean, Chubster over here is not like the Zlatan who kept really good care of his body throughout his career, but
I don't know.
But he's had such a long
career that I think it's got to
be
Rooney.
Muscle memory.
Yeah.
It's like muscle memory to perform at least to some
It
degree.
depends on how he plays
True.
here, because then it's like defeating the whole argument that we had of this isn't a retirement league anymore.
Yeah, but then it's like Wayne Rooney.
You
You guys excited for Wayne Rooney? I am.
Picking up a lot of old players that aren't necessarily in their prime.
Well, I don't think it's ever gonna go away. At least for the next couple of years. There's a lot of these clubs who are like, shit, we have no real chance of doing anything, but we have some money, so let's maybe spend it on.
Yeah, I mean, they're just bringing the revenue in. You have Wayne Rooney at your club. I get it, but
all-time leading goal scorer for England.
Yeah.
All-time leading goal scorer for Manchester United. You're gonna get a lot of people in the stadium.
Yeah. It's
if Zlatan
produce young talent, bro.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
I don't know. It's also so random. I feel like it
DC
just came
United?
out of nowhere.
Out of all clubs,
Wayne
DC
Rooney,
United.
MLS. Yeah.
I feel like Wayne Rooney does not fit what I imagine Washington DC. I don't know.
Yeah. And
They're
when the fuck are the
11th.
Revs gonna get a just highs
Right?
the Revs just fucking step it up?
The day that
Bob
Robert
Kraft
Kraft
can't really
gets his
just,
head out of his ass.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good.
Well, when they
good figure to want a celebrity player.
Meek Mill should put on a soccer jersey.
Yeah,
Just be like, yo, Bob, dude,
Yeah.
just get into soccer.
Get a fucking soccer player.
yeah, for real, dude, start pulling strings with Meek Mill. Be like, yo, get this dude to start paying attention to his other team.
Could happen.
But yeah, well, when the Revs signed Jermaine Jones a couple years back, the entire internet was just like, what? Really?
Yeah.
He did that? Because no one was expecting him to spend any money.
True.
And the way that the MLS does it is so weird. They basically create a ranking of all the clubs of who gets the next designated player, which is bonkers to me. So then it's basically like, oh, the worst club gets the highest spot to sign a player, but then if the LA Galaxy is involved, the MLS will switch all the rules and make sure LA gets what they want. And it's like, okay, great. So
yeah,
it's such a strange thing to happen. It's like Tim Howard comes back to the MLS, goes to Colorado. Wayne Rooney goes to DC. These random clubs. Oh, Zlatan, probably the biggest name since Beckham to come to the league. Oh, no, he's has to go to LA. Why wouldn't he go anywhere else?
Yeah.
So
funny how that works.
yeah.
Okay. Let's get into the episode.
So, jumping into the 3 news topics of the week. The first one that I find very interesting, an article came out on Reuters, so it's big journalistic legit website, and it's talking about how FIFA proposes staging a mini World Cup every 2 years. And so, basically, FIFA president has proposed staging what would effectively be a mini World Cup featuring 8 international teams every 2 years in additional to the traditional event. We can kind of go into a little bit more about what it is that they're trying to do, but off face value, how do you feel about this proposal?
I think it would just put more strain on, like, depending when it is. Obviously, hopefully it would be in the summer again, like when the teams have stopped playing. But if there's like even just duties to go out and play with your team to maybe qualify for that, like, would put a damper on some seasons, I think. But I'd love to see more international soccer. I don't think it takes away from the prestigiousness.
Prestige?
Prestige, yeah.
Prestigiosity.
Of, like, the World Cup itself, like the mini World Cup, but then there's still that big World Cup. So I don't think it'd be the worst idea. Maybe, like, all the teams who didn't get in, like the U.S. and the Netherlands, can play. I'd watch that.
I hate this idea. Like, I don't know who's okay. I'll let you finish, but like, face value for me, it feels like they're just sticking in another tournament. Like, they just want another tournament to exist. Like, we already have the Euros, have Copa America, these tournaments that, like, actually have some value to people. I feel like you're just creating a mini tournament just for the sake of creating a mini tournament. What's the point? I don't know. I just, like, what's the point of a mini tournament? Like, what do you get out of it? Like, oh, I'm the mini World Cup champion.
Yeah.
What's the point?
So basically what it is they're trying to, they believe it could be worth $25 billion in a 12-year cycle. So that's, like, one of the main points in the Reuters article. And so, in other words, they're kind of being like, okay, we could see that there's a lot of money to be made. Why don't we do that? I hate the idea. I think that if they do this, it's going to dilute the World Cup. It's going to make international soccer not as important as it currently is. Because in my mind, the reason the World Cup is so prestigious and it's so such a coveted thing, aside from being the top prize you can win, it's also something that only happens every 4 years. So it's the kind of thing that you look forward to. The anticipation builds. You have the fact that there's 4 years in between each tournament. It allows you to see how great of a tournament it is, and to put it creates this massive thing. But having a quote-unquote mini World Cup every 2 years, I think it breaks that up. I mean, I just think that the only person you're trying to service here is yourself, you know? Like, they already have they do say in the article that they would get rid of the Confederations Cup, which is basically like the warm-up to the World Cup that's held every year before every World Cup in the same host country, which a lot of people just kind of view as a silly tournament anyway. But, you know, they do propose getting rid of that and substituting in this, mini World Cup. I think they should just get rid of both.
Yeah, I agree. Confederations Cup, I remember being hyped up for the Confederations Cup one time, but I was much younger and kind of didn't really realize that it didn't mean anything. Like, I don't know. I've had some value for it. Now I just think it's stupid. Like, I don't even think I watched the last, Confederations Cup, like, any meaning. Like, I probably didn't watch a full 90 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't.
Kind of just like one of those things where you knew the games were happening. And
who won it last year?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Let's find out, because I just thought about that.
I don't know who was in it.
Yeah, right.
I can't think of.
Well, it's really funny because we're talking here and I'm like, oh, did I watch some games last year? But then I'm like, yeah, I don't know who even won. So
no, I see that though. I think if they were to have the mini World Cup, they'd have to eliminate. It would have to be. I would like to see just the World Cup and the mini World Cup.
Yeah.
Like it would. You can't spread it out too much.
I just think that for a truly international tournament, you don't need... Because here's the other part that I'm going to throw at you. Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, he's already expanding the World Cup to 40 teams by the next World... Or by the 2026, I believe. So, what is really the... Or 2022 World Cup. What's really the point of adding, 8 more teams to the World Cup, but then being like, oh, but we want another mini World Cup?
Because like Mr. Krabs would say, dude, money.
I had a Mr. Krabs line today. I don't know, man. Like, I love international football, but I feel like you were saying, Louis, the kind of time in between the tournaments really makes for, like, passion for the tournament. This tournament, if it's not going to Copa America, like, you're the best South American country, that makes sense. European, you're the best, the Euros, you're the best European country. This mini tournament, you're going to crown, like,
what are you the best of?
You're the best world club for a second, and then the world actual tournament that people care about comes. Like,
but there's only 8 of you, so how are you?
Then what's the?
So you're the best of the point? Picked few.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't logically make sense. Like, but I mean, you read the article and there's the $25 billion that wants to be invested. Financially, it makes sense. And then I like, there's the quote in here where Infantino says, "This means that FIFA as an organization would not benefit financially from the competition."
Yeah, right.
Like, come on, man. Fool me once, right? Like, come on. You're going to tell me FIFA's going to make no money off of these tournaments?
Yeah, we're not going to make no money. But people are willing to spend $25 billion to, like, start it.
Yeah, they're going to disperse it evenly between the organization. Okay, man.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, I think that a lot of people talk about how international soccer needs to be revamped or there needs to be something changed. But I don't think so. I think people are just... A lot of people complain about international friendlies and all these things. And, like, sure, I get it. It breaks up the season. Sometimes, like, players do come back injured. I actually think maybe just reducing the amount of meaningless friendlies. So, for example, that proposal to make that the European League, right, with the internationals, it basically creates a league that is played between international teams within Europe, and they're basically going to be playing each other in a league throughout 3 years. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible without getting into too much detail, but I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think so too. I personally, like, I love international football, but I don't like friendlies because, again, of all the issues,
like,
players coming out injured. Yeah. It just seems like scrimmages sometimes, and if you replace those with meaningful games that were worth points, I'd be into that. I don't even care about the number of it. Keep the same number and just make them actual meaningful games. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I like the friendlies, but they don't really mean much sometimes. You know what I mean?
A lot of times I feel like you're just watching it to watch your players develop, right?
Yeah.
Like you have a young talent who's coming up and you're watching that friendly just to see how he does, but you don't really care necessarily if your team wins.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's like a game with no point value, it's really just a development.
It's like, watch these two people teams
play for no reason.
No reason. There's nothing going on, but they're gonna still be real competitive, and they could still be injured for the rest of their own season. But
like
at least this is gonna get money for the TV.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that the UEFA has the right idea with creating a league within their international teams. I think that's great. I think that, and they're also going to be implementing like a sort of promotion relegation system. So, it wasn't a huge drastic change, but it was a change that is going to be replacing all the meaningless friendlies that European countries play. And so I think by just replacing, like you said, by making it more meaningful than just playing a friendly, I think that already is going to be a good revamp. So if every country were to adopt that, I'd much rather see that than create this fictitious mini Final 8 World Cup, which is just, all it would do would be to dilute the World Cup.
Yeah, and who's getting invited to this? It's just an invitation.
It says it's unclear.
Okay.
So the letter did not clearly indicate how many slots would be allocated to each region. So, all of that, I don't know. I don't think that it's worth it. I think it's just another money grab from FIFA.
FIFA really not changing it up. Really not changing up there.
No.
Let's do a smaller tournament of the biggest tournament in the world and way less teams. Way less teams.
Eight teams? Like, how long is that tournament even going to last?
It's going to last
2
weeks.
That's right.
What if we did, like, single round elimination?
Does it just automatically go into elimination games? Like, what is the point?
I don't know.
Plus, they're going to pick a host country? Like, or are they going to have to go through that whole...
Another host country where they can't...
That's where FIFA's going to make the money, is they're going to get the bribes to host the mini-tournament.
Mini-tournament, and then it's like, we'll have our stadiums done. It's just like, these stadiums aren't done yet. It's like, this happens every 2 years.
We'll put in the 100 million slaves to...
The best part is that, like, in reality, an 8-team tournament, you probably require one one venue.
Day.
But then, like, you'd go to, like, some country that bribed FIFA, like, I don't know, Malaysia. Let's say Malaysia just paid FIFA out the wazoo, and they're like, we're going to build 17 stadiums for this mini World Cup. And you're like, sir, there's only going to be about 6 games played. We could probably just do with one tournament, one venue.
17.
We need 17 stadiums.
Yeah. So... No, I don't want this to happen.
I really hope it doesn't go through. Unfortunately, I think that it's kind of already on its way. But
also, this is just like something with do people get no say in FIFA? I feel like
no.
Like, Louis, you bringing this topic up was the first time I've ever heard of it. Like, I feel like it was just like, who are they sending this letter to? Like, who's the letter going to?
I think it was a press letter, if I'm not mistaken.
They just shipped out this letter. And then that was just like, we're going to probably do this.
Well, because I think about it, it's rooters, right? So I'm assuming, like, FIFA sent these huge this big important press letter to all the biggest, most important news outlets. And so I almost wonder, like, do you think that they're doing this just to see people's reaction? They're just like, okay, let's send this letter out, let them publish it, and see how people react.
See what they will say.
What the heck? I don't know. Sketchy. But 'tis the norm.
'Tis the norm. So, moving on to a more American-based news topic. America. Also in relation to last week's episode on Nassau, Comiso, the owner of the New York Cosmos, has offered the United States Soccer Federation $500 million of his own money, as well as the commitment of a couple of partners of his to match his investment, for a total of $1.5 million investment into
Big baller brand.
Big billion?
Wow.
Or
million with an M, which is still a lot of money. Investment into U.S. soccer, as long as his conditions are met. So what he basically has outwardly come out, and he's basically outwardly come out and said that he is willing to invest all this money. Him and his, like, the people that he has in with, I'm assuming it's some of the other Nassau owners and some of the people that he knows. They are basically coming together saying, we are willing to invest $1.5 million in U.S. soccer, whatever that means, whether it be, lots of different things, as long as his conditions are met. And so what are those conditions? So basically, they're broken down into 4 main points. First point is the elimination of U.S. soccer's deal with SUM. And this is one of those, that's their marketing arm, I believe, that we kind of talked a little bit about during the USSF election episode. And he calls for the elimination of that, and it's basically to be replaced by an open and competitive bidding process, which is, I believe, how a lot of other organizations usually run their things. It's kind of like you put out a bid, someone offers, and they kind of do that kind of. The second main point of his is the development and implementation of rules addressing club poaching strategies, which Comiso alleges are utilized by both MLS and USL to destabilize competing leagues, to ensure all of the leagues are on equal footing and none has an unfair advantage over any of the others. And in the last 3 seasons, Nassau has lost 4 clubs to USL and 1 to MLS. So this is one of the biggest points in comparison to what we were talking about last week, how he's basically saying that the MLS and USL, through their kind of connected relationship, has been poaching clubs, players, and all of that from these other leagues to basically, in a way, destabilize and ruin these leagues, which is what we talked about last week. Third point is equal representation and voting power on USSF's board for each professional league. In other words, another thing that goes with the transparency of what we spoke about in the USSF election episode, where we stated that there's a lot of unclear things that go on in the USSF and MLS and USL. And then the final point is precluding board members with ties to professional leagues governed by USSF and or USSF's business partners from playing any role in the selection of independent directors or athlete council members. The letter names Don Garber, MLS commissioner, and SUM chief executive as an example. I'm guessing that some of these bigger guys, they've basically just been kind of putting their hands too deep in certain areas. In other words, Don Garber's been personally handpicking things, and it's another thing that goes into the transparency and a little bit of the sketchiness that goes behind. And so basically I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on this, because a lot of this is kind of coming out because Nassau is in this state where they're not going to be playing 2018. Their future is very unclear. Comiso has actually been trying to get a lot more people interested in Nassau, and I believe he's actually the interim commissioner for Nassau right now. And so all of this is kind of coming out because he wants to rebuild Nassau. He wants to have that same thing. But what are your thoughts on this proposal of his?
Yeah, I dig it, honestly. I mean, it's relatively straightforward. I do think that last final point regarding the board members being removed from any kind of selection process is what is going to hinge on this whole deal going through. The other 3 points, like, I could see there being some discussions and kind of some give and take between Comiso and USSF, but that last point seems like something that is going to be tricky, because I feel like they don't want to give up any power and any say in kind of their authority. That might be the biggest thing. But overall, I mean, from face value and kind of just looking at this a few times, it seems like it makes sense. I mean, it's straightforward. It's trying to make a sustainable league and actually set some provisions to make sure that the league can stay afloat. But yeah, that last point seems to be like, to me, like what would be the biggest issue. I mean, I'd like to. I do know how when was that he proposed this?
A couple weeks, been 2 weeks.
Yeah,
2 to 3 weeks.
So I mean, I'd like to see what USSF's thoughts on this are, but overall, I do like the idea.
I think it's a fantastic idea, but I just think that USSF is just going to be like, yeah, no, we don't care.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, great money, but we're fine doing what we want to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like they've already set up their establishment is set,
Yep.
and they don't want to.
They don't want to have any kind of competition or any
Yeah.
other leagues, but I mean, I'd love to see it happen just because Nassau, I think, was a super awesome league.
So I think that I think the way he did it was very interesting. I think that he kind of put the USSF in a bind, right? Because he came out and says that this investment would be to all of U.S. soccer. So in other words, it's like we want to better the sport within the country, which is supposed to be the USSF's like main ambitious goal. And then he says, I'm willing to do this as long as you guys play ball. So he's kind of backing them into a corner.
Yeah.
I almost think that he's expecting them to say no, because I think he wants to turn the public's eye towards these issues.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the USSF is going to be put in a very weird position. If they say yes, you know, everyone's happy in a way, right? Nassau gets to start running its stuff again. All of this stuff starts to work a little bit better. United States Soccer gets a big, huge investment within all of these investors. And if they say no, the public's eye gets turned to this topic where it's like, why did USSF say no?
Yeah.
Is there something else going on in here?
Exactly. So I think that it was kind of genius in a way to do this, because it does put them in a bind, and it really highlights the main issues that we've spoke about with Nassau and USSF and all of these unclear, non-transparent issues that arise. And so I don't believe the MLS or USSF has responded to this.
Yeah.
So at the time that I researched this, the president, Carlos Cordero, had not been reached for a comment. They did say that he was busy helping something or other, and he wasn't able to comment, which is what the article said. But either way, no one had responded. And we'll see, right? I don't know. I really don't think... I agree with B. I really don't think this is going to happen. Nothing's going to happen about this. I think they're just going to kind of ignore it and hope that everyone forgets. I think they're just not going to make a public statement on it.
Yeah.
Which, of course, like I said, it does kind of play into what I believe to be Comiso's main goal, which is to put the public's eye on these topics.
Yeah. I mean, 1.5 bill is hard to turn down.
Mil.
Oh, but isn't it 3 of them? They'd all each match. Like, he would put in his 500 million.
Yeah, exactly. 1.5 million, I think, is what.
Oh,
total. Yeah.
Yikes! It's not that much to the USSF.
I guess not, right?
Yeah.
But you know. Oh, sorry. Whoa, guys. Fuck. It's 500 million.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So then times 3 is 1.5 billion.
I think the total is 500 million.
Oh,
so his total was 250.
Oh, so they're splitting it. Okay. Yeah.
But still, I mean, 500 mil, that's
500. So $500 million.
Like, yo, I'll listen.
That's a lot of money. I apologize, listeners. I messed up the amount here, but it's $500 million total in funding that Comiso is offering to revamp U.S. soccer, as well as, you know, NASL and everything like that. But $500 million. That's a lot of money.
Big chunk. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, yeah, I don't really expect much to happen, but.
Yeah, I don't either. But like I said, it puts the USSF in a little bit of a bind, where you have someone publicly saying, "All right, let's invest $500 million in United States soccer," and then they're like, "Well, we don't want to because we don't want to play by these rules."
Yeah.
And lastly, for the third news topic, Arsenal is considering renaming one of their stands after Arsene Wenger. Basically, I wanted to use this as a segue into thinking, like, let's talk about Arsene Wenger's legacy, right? Like, does he deserve a stand being renamed after him? And I kind of want to ask a question. How do you guys view Arsene Wenger's career overall?
I'm not really an Arsenal fan, so I mean, I don't really know too much of his career, to be honest. I know he was at Arsenal for a fucking grip, so I think if he has had, I mean, and he did coach the quote unquote Invincibles, you know. So I think with that being said, a guy like that who has devoted so much of his time in his life to a team where this year has really just turned their back on him for a majority of the season. Like, a lot of people are giving him shit and this and that when, like, yeah, he's made his mistakes and everything, but at the same time, like, he is a pretty dope coach and he's been there for so long. So I would greenlight it. I'm all for the fans recognizing one of their coaches because it's a tough job to be a coach for so long at a team where you eventually have to leave, and it's just like, well, fuck, like, they kind of, like, notice that, like, I wasn't producing as well as I have been. So it's got to be a pretty big hit to him. So I would say greenlight that shit.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if he had only been there 1 year and done the Invincibles, you get a stand named after yourself. I don't give a shit about anything because having a season undefeated is damn near impossible in the modern game. So that alone, I think, merits him getting a stand. I think that also, I mean, then, sure, say he hadn't won the Invincibles, you stay at a club for 20 years, whether you win that many trophies or not, you have a relationship with the club. I mean, you've done something right to be able to stay there for that long. You deserve a stand as well. I mean, I think that you don't necessarily need to be the most successful person ever. If you stay at a club for that long, you become that club's history regardless. So, I mean, unless there were sketchy things that were keeping him at the club, I'm not saying that that's the reason why, but he has history there. I mean, I only know Arsenal as Arsene Wenger, kind of, ever since I've started following English football. He's been the only manager there. So I think for sure deserves it. It's sad to kind of see the way that he's being treated because he has given so much to them. But at the same time, like, dude, you haven't really won that much. I get it. Like, if I were Manchester United, I'd be pretty pissed that he was still there. So I'm not judging any Arsenal fans for the way he's being treated. But it's funny to see how quickly people can kind of turn their opinions. Like, now that he's retired, it's like, oh my, like, he is such an amazing person, blah, blah, blah. Where it was like last week, he was like, get him out. Like, I don't care. Banners flying over the stadium. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? So I think it's just a nice time to appreciate him and go from there.
Well, that was basically the reason why I wanted to bring this up, because I think that his career is such a career of two halves, and his public opinion is such a phenomenon of like two halves, right? First half of his career at Arsenal, phenomenal. Had the Invincibles, won, I think it was like 3 league titles.
He's also credited as being kind of like the man who revolutionized the way that English Premier League soccer was played, right? He was like the Pep Guardiola of that time. Like, I mean, Fergie's credited him with being not even Liverpool, like the Arsenal was the reason why Manchester United had to step their game up and be so successful, because Arsenal was the team to beat. So, I mean, if you have that kind of lasting impact on a league, you probably deserve a little credit.
Right, and I think that, I think they've won three league titles and it ended with the Invincibles, because then after that they haven't won the league since. But, they won a couple FA Cups and everything like that. And they were always around the top of the Premier League, but never really, like, they would challenge every couple of years. And, there was that season where everyone thought they were actually going to win, but they were top at Christmas and ended up 4th by the end of it, which was amazing, or 2nd, whatever it was. They literally just dropped all those points.
And other than recent, they haven't really fallen out of top 4. Like, they've finished, obviously, these last couple of years where they haven't finished top 4, but to keep a club in the top 4 race for that longevity is pretty damn near hard.
And I think that, like you said, without Arsene Wenger, there would be no Arsenal to what, we see it today.
Right.
It wouldn't be... I guess it has kind of fallen out of favor in the past, 5-ish years of where everyone thinks about Arsenal, because Man City's come up with all their oil money, Chelsea's been up and everything, and so
I heard the shots fired.
But I think they should. I think people should respect him. I think they should rename the stand. It's just a matter of, I do think it was time to go. I think he stuck around for way too long. I think he could have left 3 seasons ago and it probably would have been fine. But at the same time, give the guy the recognition, right?
Does he have a statue? Henry has a statue.
Arsene Wenger should have a statue.
Yeah, I think so. Do you think he's going to coach in the Premier League again?
I don't think so. I think he'll coach other places. He might go back to France. They're saying that he might come to MLS. There's some people even touting him to be the next U.S. men's national team coach.
I think Wenger would be dope at PSG with the squad they have now.
Oh, I'd love to see that. But Wenger, I lost a lot of. I used to think he was a phenomenal manager, but then I just think maybe he had his hand too deep into who they could buy and things like that. If he had just stuck to coaching, I think he would have been much better at Arsenal. I just think that some of the buys he made were just weird.
But he's an attacking guy. Think of the team they have right now. They would be pretty freaking baller under him, I think.
I will say they've always had a very well coached team. Like I said, I think like you said, they're
just buying Danny Welbeck. That's the problem.
They're just buying Danny Welbeck and these other
Alex
young
Iwobi's,
players.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, a Neymar, Mbappe, Cavani trio under Wenger could be pretty dangerous.
Be pretty crazy.
I feel like he has lost a little bit of touch, but it's also just he could be rejuvenated at a new club where I don't know, he has an attacking front and kind of give him a little more. He doesn't have so much negativity. Also, just so much negativity over a long extended period of time can really do some damage to you, So
I'm surprised he stayed sane.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's hard. People are questioning every single decision of yours over 5 years. It's hard. It's hard to.
And it's weird because he was on this pedestal of being an untouchable. Everything he did, most Arsenal fans for a very long period of time wouldn't even question him. And then slowly but surely people started to become, more Wenger out and all this stuff. And then Arsenal Fan TV starts to blow up, and it hits a crescendo 2 years ago with everyone saying Wenger out, Wenger out. And then I think most Arsenal fans just kind of resigned themselves to be he's not leaving anytime soon. So a lot of them were just whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to see him at a new club, but we'll see. He might need a little sabbatical, and then
might need to take some time off. And I will say though, I think that if they were to just remove him from the decision making of who gets bought or sold or whatever, then I think he's a fine coach. I just don't think he makes always the best decisions in terms of players.
It's true.
Also, something that I just recently found out is that before he was at Arsenal, was in Japan coaching.
Yeah.
Really?
What the hell?
He won the Japanese league with...
he was revolutionary in Japan, too. What the hell? That is so weird.
His career is very interesting to me, though. He's been in some weird teams. Aside from Arsenal, of course, but...
Who knows? Maybe he goes back to Japan and does some crazy shit there.
On the prospect of him coaching the U.S. men's national team, are we for it or are we against it? I know it's just a rumor, but I'm curious.
For it, man.
Yeah,
fuck
why
it.
not?
It's just not working now. Let's switch it up anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just switch
Throw
it
a
up.
complete curveball.
Yeah,
Don't go with what people are expecting. Go with Arsene Wenger.
Can we have a talk about not having people who weren't
European outside
coaches?
Yeah, but if you want, I feel like if you're gonna take the U.S. up a level, you're not gonna really do it with the U.S. coach right now.
You gotta do it, Wenger.
That's an interesting question, Louis. Arsene Wenger for the U.S. men's national team.
So, listeners, what do you think? Do you think Arsene Wenger should be the next U.S. men's national team coach? Would you like to see that?
Who is he up against right now? What are some of the names?
Honestly, there's not much out right now because USSF is taking their sweet time deciding. But then again, they don't really have a rush because, like we know, the U.S. is not in the World Cup. They're saying a couple names like Peter Vermes, which is the coach from Sporting Kansas City. There's not many names, and a lot of them.
That's Toronto FC coach, I think so too.
Is he in the mix too?
Yeah.
Yeah. The mix of coaches that are being discussed, none of them are really that great.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I mean, then again, a lot of people are saying that Peter Vermes is probably one of the better choices, but he came out and said this week that he's staying at Sporting Kansas City. So I don't really know.
Yeah.
I think Arsene Wenger would be an inspired hire for U.S. men's national team coach. I think that it must be so different, though. I wonder what the life is like of a national team coach versus a
super chill coach. In my mind.
Right?
Super. I mean, there's obviously responsibilities, but you just travel around the world watching your players. Be you kind of scratch your head, should I get him? Bring him. If he sucks, he sucks. Because he obviously does international coaches don't do all the scouting. They have people that would go out and watch. Also, you can watch all these guys on TV, so it's really not that.
It's got to be nice.
Yeah, I think it's super chill.
And instead of the fact that you don't make a World Cup, then it's just
yeah, obviously the pressure mounts, but I'm saying like day in and day out activities are probably super
365.
chill.
Yeah,
That must
to
be
be making
sick.
that making the money they make like day in day out. Their jobs probably aren't that crazy.
Yeah.
Because like again, the friendlies are 3 months apart. You have a lot
what
of
do I have
time
to do
think.
today? You know?
And they get paid a lot of money, so it's like, you're chilling for most of the year.
Being an international coach,
I think that's the play, guys.
That's the play.
That's the play.
Well, I think that's why some of these guys go coach random ass teams like Iran and shit. You know what I mean? Like
That's true.
it's not that crazy.
Well, it was like Barreira, who was the coach for Brazil when they won in, what was it? One of the World Cups. He was one of the coaches. He's coached the most random teams. He's coached South Africa, Iran, I believe,
you don't even need to go live there. You don't even need to go live in the
No.
country. Like, just go watch players, show up every 3 months, coach them for a week, and then go play a game, and then be done.
I think one of the weirdest ones was Bob Bradley. Didn't he coach Egypt?
Really?
I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
Bob Bradley
maybe.
was the coach for Egypt at one point.
Yeah, I just like, now that I think of it, that could have been a career path.
Yeah, coaching.
Hey,
Coaching
you're not dead
international-
yet.
Coaching international teams.
Yeah, no, Bob Bradley he got fired from the United States men's national team position in 2011 and became the head coach
Chilling
for
in
the
Egypt.
Egyptian national team
Damn.
from 2011 2013.
So Bob Bradley made Mo Salah, basically.
I wonder.
Probably.
That's interesting. It's an
If we're
interesting
gonna be
thought.
real.
Damn. That's pretty sweet.
That is pretty cool.
Okay, I think enough of the BS. We should get into probably what the main topic of the episode will be.
Yeah, right.
That's a good idea.
That wasn't the episode? Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's the end of the episode, guys. Thank you so much. Check in next week for...
For another 3 riveting topics.
So, tying it in a little bit to our beloved New England Revolution. And by beloved, I don't mean beloved, but, whatever. They recently traded Lee Nguyen to LAFC for $700,000 in TAM. And I read this headline and I thought to myself, what the fuck does that mean? Because it wasn't like they traded their best player for $700,000, which I was like, that's ridiculous. This man is
What a
way too
bargain.
good for $700,000. So I'm like, what the fuck is all this stuff? And I figured maybe I'll do a little bit of research to find out what is TAM, why did this go through? Because in my head, I'm like, how could you trade your best player for $700,000, whatever denomination this is? And so to give you a little bit of perspective, Lee Nguyen's production of 54 goals and 56 assists in 211 league and cup appearances is among the best in the MLS. Like, he's by far one of the best players in the MLS over the past however many seasons. And he, a couple years back, was one of the finalists for the MLS MVP. So this is a player that you should really be building your team around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is your corner piece. This is a guy that doesn't make too much money. It's not like Giovinco, who tops the list of the highest paid players in the MLS. This is Lee Nguyen. This is a guy that you can build around. Yet
he's going out for $700,000.
is going out for $700,000 funny money dollars.
Funny money.
And
We'll pay you funny money.
to give you an idea, though, he hasn't played this year at all because he's been holding out. He's been kind of pissed off about the whole situation in New England, and he really wanted to get out. And so Brad Friedel hasn't picked him for a single game. He hasn't been in any match day squad, and he's just been kind of sitting at home doing nothing.
Which I'm fully behind, by the way. Like, not playing a guy that sits out.
Yeah.
Right.
Hell
Fair
yeah.
enough. And trading him, even better.
Fuck
Get
yeah.
some of those funny money dollars. And so, basically, why... So what does this mean? So first of all, what is TAM? TAM is Targeted Allocation Money, which is a funny money MLS rule that was implemented in 2015. So essentially, it's to kind of have to understand the MLS's structure, right? We talked about how the MLS has their designated players, which allow them to go over their salary cap to sign these players. General allocation money and targeted allocation money are just these new supplements that they decided to create in 2015 to try and alleviate a little bit of the top heaviness of each of the squads, right? Because like we spoke about recently, a lot of MLS teams, they had these 3 amazing players, and then the rest of their squad was made up of, I kind of want to say loose parts, right? Like spare parts that kind of get put together around
It's
these
like when
3
you
players.
play any fantasy thing, and then you you pick the best players, and then you have a little bit of money left, and you just click X to randomize the selection for the rest of them. That's basically what happens.
That was basically, yeah, exactly. All these MLS teams were playing fantasy football out here, getting 3 high-end players and filling out the roster with whatever else they could find, because that's how it worked. And so what MLS did was created something called General Allocation Money and Targeted Allocation Money. I could bore you with the actual definition, but I'm basically going to break it down to what Target Allocation Money is. It allows you to sign players who would make more money than the salary cap allows, but less money than a DP. And so that just means that teams in the MLS are allowed to sign better players and make their squads not top heavy, right? And that's kind of what they want. It's essentially a way to bend but not break their own designated player rules and also their own restrictions.
So you're essentially saying, say there's this guy that's going to cost about the same amount as a DP would cost, but if we use TAM money to push that value down, he's no longer a designated player, he's on our roster. So that TAM money is to kind of push down the fact that...
Exactly. Cool. And it allows you to...
TAM for dummies.
TAM for dummies and Brendan.
So it's exactly what it is. You're allowed to use your TAM money.
Yo, this is the first money thing
we've ever got
MLS that I have actually grasped and be able to think about it. It's great.
It's so funny. I got so scared when I started doing the research. I'm like, yo, this is going to be another one of those episodes where I'm going to get confused when I talk and it's going to be too much. But then I started realizing it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Basically, you're allowed to use TAM to buy down certain designated players' contracts to free up another designated player slot to sign another amazing player. So let's say, for example, you were an MLS club, you had 3 DPs, one of them that was making just a little bit above the threshold, and you're like, well, if I use some TAM to push him down to fit under my salary cap and free up one of those DP slots, I can sign, X star from Superstar Wayne Rooney, bring him to your club. And so that was kind of the point. It was to allow the league to become more competitive by making each of these teams not so top heavy. But what gets funny is you can trade your TAM, which it's like
a playing card.
Dude, the MLS is out here playing cards.
I got 700,000 TAM. I can trade you for your best player. Are you trying to do that? Yeah, man. Let's go for it.
Yeah, here's my player and here's fake money.
Can you accumulate TAM from different teams?
I believe so.
Give a TAM
cards.
I got 3 TAM.
I got 3 TAM cards. I'm stashing them for next season.
I got 1.4 million in that TAM. Wow.
I believe you can. I believe you can kind of stash your TAM and use it. I'm sure there are rules to how much TAM you can use in certain perspectives. But, to give you an idea, the LA Galaxy, they signed Zlatan with TAM. They didn't sign him with a DP slot because, they have Giovanni Dos Santos as one of their DPs. I don't know who else is their DP, but
shoot,
it
must
basically
use a lot of TAM bucks.
Yeah, I wonder what the TAM bucks is.
But, yeah, it's just...
You know what the problem is? I feel when you talk about financial things, you just don't need that many acronyms. If you get DP, TAM, what is it, GAM? There's GAM. You don't need that. You don't need that many acronyms to be describing something that is just And my question here is this not with all these rules? Do you think they're moving into an area now where they're just going to eventually drop these things, or they're just going to keep building on them, right?
You know what? I was wondering that, and that was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys. It seems like they're weaving this web of random-ass rules that I feel like if they don't stop soon, it's just going to become a giant mess. It's already a mess to try and explain to... Right. I mean, the 3 of us, we didn't follow the MLS too closely for the longest time, and now we're starting to follow it a lot more. For us to understand this is already crazy. I can't imagine if you're just saying it to someone hey man, follow the MLS, but here's all the different playing card rules you got to know to understand our league. And which is a very interesting thing because there was a poll that went out to every single MLS player on roster in the MLS, and it asked them, do you understand how general allocation money and target allocation money works? 50% of the league said they did not.
Yeah.
So think about it. You have the players in your own league who are the closest to all of this, who should know how this is because it affects their salaries, it affects where they're going, it affects all of these different things. Yet, only 50% of them know. That number seems way too low to me.
Yeah. And it's another way for teams to exploit players, right? If players don't understand their financial situations, teams that do understand them can really kind of like fuck them over.
Yeah, but in a way, it's like if you're signed on as a player at a club, you get kind of fucked over every once in a while anyway, right? Because it's just like...
Yeah, but I just don't think there needs to be the headache of having to also understand this like financial scheme. When there's already, I mean, as a professional player, you already kind of have a lot to worry about.
And there are even certain things in your contract that allow, like, say you score over X amount of goals, you get more money.
Right.
And then, like, this and that. And then to have another thing just on top of that to make you think about more money and just things you don't necessarily need to think about.
Just doesn't make it clear. I don't know. It just seems a little absurd to me.
I think it's the idea. I just think that the idea that the people who are closest to this don't necessarily understand it seems very wrong.
Right.
I get it. It's only been implemented, 3 years ago, but 3 years is a long time to be able to understand something.
Yeah, like the whole 50% of the people that are being used for this money.
They need to have like an employee training day where they just teach these guys.
Welcome to the TAM workshop. Today we're going to be talking about TAM.
TAM and you.
Yeah, it's like a 15 slide thing. Yeah, you got to fill out a worksheet after. Like,
got to take the test.
You have to take the test, and you have to know.
So it brings up the question: is this just an overcomplication of rules, or is it a clever workaround? Because as we've said before, it seems like the MLS is just kind of complicating all of these things. And I personally believe the MLS is kind of getting to a point where it should maybe start thinking about abolishing these rules and just opening up the league, which is what we've said with what NASA was trying to do and all this. But what do you guys think? Is this just an overcomplication, or is it a clever workaround to what they were doing?
I think it's a little bit of both. It is an overcomplication, but it's also a legal way for them to kind of make it easier for teams to get more balanced teams. And you're right. I think that if this continues to be an issue where they're having to make so many rules to kind of bend their own original rules, maybe that they should consider just dropping them and making it kind of more of an open market type of situation. And as we've spoken about, I think that it does make sense now because it is helping teams survive in the MLS. But you're right. I do think that it's reaching a point now where we're seeing a lot of traction for the MLS and in soccer in the country in general, especially at the MLS's level, where they might not necessarily need to be worried about kind of that the needing to keep teams alive issue, and they could start kind of thinking of dropping these rules, because at the end of the day, if you're going to keep adding rules to make it eventually become something of an open market, just make it simple, right? Remove the headache, get rid of that, and just let teams compete financially for who they can and be smart with their money that way. But I don't know. I think it is complicated, but it is also just a smart way for them to allow teams to be more competitive.
Yeah, I think I'd go more towards the clever workaround.
Yeah.
Just because we've seen that where the MLS works, and I don't think they're going to be changing anytime soon.
Yeah.
Unless there's like some kind of crazy outbreak or backlash for something. So I think they're trying to keep the people who are complaining about uneven teams down by saying like, well, look, you can only have 3 designated players, but we have this TAM thing. We'll give you this, so you can use this fake money, not fake money, but these bucks to bring down a person that you really want, or you say one of your players who is a designated player isn't playing as well or something, and you really need to spice up the team, and using that TAM money is a way to kind of cleverly say that we need better people, but we can't afford it because we have our designated players.
Yeah.
But
then at the same time, as I'm saying that, it's just like, damn, well, then why not just abolish all the rules so you don't have to worry about it?
Yeah.
So the main reason is, like, the same reason why they even have, like, designated players is to keep the league relatively with good parity. In other words, they don't want just one team ruling everything, which I can understand. I can understand why you don't want that, because there are leagues, like we spoke about last week, there's a lot of leagues in the world where certain teams, Bayern, just win every single year. And is it really that fun? No. But at the same time, I think that I do think it's a little bit of a clever workaround because, like you said, they want to appease to everybody, and they do see that they need to change certain things. And I don't necessarily think they should abolish all of their monetary restrictions for teams, but I do think that it is getting to a point where it's like, do you really have to designate what player is a DP and what player is making this? Can't you just kind of pay them a certain amount? Couldn't you essentially just make the salary cap much bigger?
Yeah.
Like,
That's the thing.
I think
it's
there
like,
must be other workarounds.
It's the age-old issue I have on this podcast, and as we cover topics, it's like, what's up with the babying of? I mean, these are businesses, right? Businesses need to be run smart. If you're not run smart, you collapse. Other than that, have people and have organizations that are being run the correct way. Have ways of monitoring teams to make sure that they're actually being financially sound, not making stupid decisions and getting 3 players that are putting them overboard. Set sanctions or something like that. But what's up with I don't get the need to baby these teams and kind of set these rules when at the end of the day, the MLS is a business, right? All of these sports leagues in the world are businesses. Treat them as such. Don't baby them and kind of go from there. I mean, I think that there's this overcomplication of things when it can be pretty simple and straightforward. And honestly, we do have the big examples of Bayern and kind of Barca, Real Madrid, where the leagues are dominated by one club. But if you look at clubs leagues around the world, a lot of leagues are super competitive that run an open market, Brazil being one of them, right? They're like, it's probably one of the hardest leagues in the world. Like every
I don't think they've had
season.
a repeat. I don't think they've had a repeat champion in so long.
Oh, Cruzeiro did, I think.
In 2009.
Yeah, I guess
I believe it was.
Yeah, but like, you know what I mean? A lot of leagues around we look at the big leagues, but a majority of like smaller leagues around the world are pretty damn competitive with an open market. They survive. Right, they have this, and it's super exciting, and you don't have to worry about all these weird financial rules. So I don't know. I think that.
Oh, sorry, Cruzeiro did repeat as champions in 2013 and 2014, but you do have a lot of in Brazil. There is a lot of parity. You really don't often see repeat winners.
Right. No. What Cruzeiro did was super hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like a big feat for them to be able to do that.
Their team those years were nuts.
Yeah.
So great.
But yeah, no, I mean...
So
I don't know.
One question I have is, do you think an implementation of something similar to financial fair play would apply to the MLS? Would that be a good workaround for this? Well, that's what I'm
thinking. Like, have some type of, financial... Although we know financial fair play is sketchy and whatever it is.
Yep.
Have some type of regulatory system that isn't a cap system, right? So you're not capping teams and having them do all these weird things. Have a rule every year. You're it's like taxes. You're going to monitor their financials, see if they're making sense. If not, you set a sanction. Hey, transfer ban. You can't do this. Be smarter with your money. I think that going forward, that might be something that makes more sense. That isn't such a headache, and it doesn't require teams to be doing these kind of financial gymnastics to create equal teams. Just have them have a cap or whatever, not a cap, but have them run their money the way they need to run it. If they have a good team, they have a good team. If they don't, they don't.
Well, you know what I think is interesting is that even in leagues where there is a small group of teams that win every year or so, there are other things that teams play for, right? It's not just the league. In Germany, you have, and in every league really, you have the league, and you also have the country's cup.
Right.
And if you're good enough, you make it into certain European competitions. Either you're going to go to the Champions League or you're going to go to the Europa League. Similar in South America, either you're going to go to Libertadores or you're going to go to the Copa Sudamericana, which is the equivalent of those two. And it's I think that if you were to allow a more open system, and do put in something like financial fair play where you're monitoring just their taxes and how much they spend versus how much comes in, I think that's probably fine. Yeah. And it's of course there are issues with financial fair play, so anybody listening, I get that it's not a perfect system.
No.
But at the same time, it's a system that I think every club should be looked at individually. If you spend X amount, you need to be making that much amount, and I think that's the basis of financial fair play. So doing something along those lines, I think will end up being better for the MLS in the long run. I think that in connection to what Rocco Comaso wants to do with Nassau, and in connection with what a lot of people are yelling for in the U.S. in terms of opening up the systems, making everything more clear and transparent, I personally think it's time to just open it up. Like, you're babying and protecting your league, but you see that it's working. I don't know what, like...
Yeah, I think that there was a place for, and it was a smart move to do at one point, right? It kept the MLS alive, afloat, equal, but I think we're reaching a point now where that's no longer necessary. I think teams now are starting to have, financially, they're in a good situation where there's no need to have to worry about them and baby them, as I've been saying. So I think that it's not going to be changed. It's definitely not going to be changed soon, but I think that it's something that should be considered.
So do we think that this is hindering the MLS? Because think about it. If the league is growing and you're getting a lot more interest, you're getting a lot more viewers, you're getting a lot more attendees to matches, you're getting a lot more public eye on the MLS, do we think these rules, the DP, the GAM, the TAM, all these funny money rules, are they actually a hindrance on the MLS's growth?
I think in today's world, yes. Like, if we're looking at it right now and today, I think it is kind of hindering it, because you've seen over the past couple of years, like, teams starting up, like LAFC, and they're doing fucking great. And there's people already about the team. There's already people going to the games, buying the jerseys, everything like that. So the money is there. I think that if they have all that there, why are they gonna just hinder that and like kind of put a roof on top? It's like, you can get up to this point, but like unfortunately every MLS team can only get up to this point. So I mean, yes, it would keep it competitive, but I think open market, we're a capitalistic society,
right? And when we talk about all these rules, right, and not even just TAM in general, but like when we were talking about this episode, like why does the Galaxy get Zion, right? Why is there almost like there's a draft for teams that can then get players from overseas or these big name players? It just doesn't seem like something that is fair, even though you're trying to make it fair, right? So like, why does DC United get dibs to Wayne Rooney? Like it I don't know. It just doesn't seem it doesn't seem like it is something that is super fair. Where like, what if the Revs wanted to compete for him, or some other teams wanted to compete for them if they don't have the choice for it?
I think you actually can trade your allocation spot. So here's another funny move. It's like there's a ladder of who gets to get the next big international player that the MLS, they set up the system over 10 years ago when Bex came to the league. So it's like, it was an older idea, but it's like essentially they make a draft table of who gets to get the next big player. So when Tim Howard came back to the MLS, Colorado happened to have the worst record. They happened to be at the top of this weird allocation system. And then, if the Revs wanted to get Wayne Rooney, they would have had to trade some other thing to move up this weird ass ladder. Versus why couldn't it have been one club in the MLS reaching out to Wayne Rooney saying, "Hey, we want to put you under contract. We want you to play for us. Let's make it. Then are you on board? Then at this point, let's negotiate with Everton, and then it's easy." But no, it seems that essentially the MLS will reach out to a player like Wayne Rooney and be like, "Hey, we're the MLS. We want you to play in the MLS." "Oh, okay, cool. Where am I going?" And they're like, "Oh, we don't know."
11th place team, DC United.
So it's like, why?
And I think this brings up another question when you asking about it hindering the MLS. Do you think that fans care? Like, we talk about these topics because it's something for us to talk about, and they're interesting
to us.
But like, do you think the average MLS viewer cares about this being about the DP rule and having this whole thing?
So I don't want to put everyone in a bucket, because that seems, I don't want to talk about everybody, but from what I've seen, a lot of the people who closely follow the MLS, they've also kind of followed this sheltered mentality of the only soccer that exists in the world is the MLS. And of course, like I'm saying, I'm not saying this is everybody. And so I think a lot of people, they just kind of accept what the league does.
It's also the whole cap space thing is common for American sports in general. Right?
Super common for any American sports fan to really grasp these ideas, because it's very funny to me, because I love the NBA and I love all of the NBA trade rules and all that, and I'll actually go through all of that because I find that very interesting. And in comparison, for MLS, I hate it.
Yeah.
And so
it doesn't fit your mental scheme for what you're used to. Worldwide soccer.
Right, which is also another point that I think we should make is that,
we're used to watching something else.
Yeah. And it's just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. I just think that it is hindering the league's growth. But I think that a lot of people, they do accept it at face value from the standpoint of, okay, the league is doing this, it's going to better the league, I'm on board. But then again, my thought is, if 50% of the league doesn't even know about this, do 50% of the MLS fans really understand TAM, GAM,
right.
and here's my thing. If the MLS has to have a glossary on their website to describe their funny money rules, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, here's the definition for TAM.
Yeah, they do actually have the glossary, which you pointed out. Like, you go on the website and find, like, they have their own dictionary. Like, why? Why do they have their own dictionary?
Like, sports should, in theory, be relatively simple, especially a sport like soccer, where it is the most simple sport. You want me to explain to you the rules of soccer? Very simple. There are 11 guys on each half of a field. There's one ball. You get the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and like the same issue that we're having with the main one of the main news points with the new Baby World Cup, you're just making things more complicated than they are.
Yeah.
Right? And as a soccer fan, I don't want that. I want things to be simple. I want any new technology to be simple. I want anything that's going to be brought into the sport to make it simpler and easier to understand and not necessarily more difficult. So this idea of kind of setting all these financial regulations doesn't fit with the schema that I have generally for the sport, right? It doesn't correlate.
And I think, like, I shouldn't spend, as a fan, I should be focused 100% on supporting my team and wanting them to win, right? I should be focused on, okay, so my jersey just came in, I'm going to this game, going to that game, going to that game, I'm going to meet up with this supporters group to paint this tifo, to do all this. I shouldn't be worried about whether or not my team is the number one spot on an allocation thing. Do we have enough TAM to sign Wayne Rooney? Like, I shouldn't have to do this gymnastics. I should be able to just support my team and not care about these things. And I'm sure a lot of MLS fans don't give a shit, and they're just going to support their team no matter what. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, just it does affect your fanship, I guess, having to worry about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're a hardcore fan. Like
even just for the Revs, like, giving up one of granted, he hasn't been playing, but, like, giving up one of our best players for this funny money. And, I mean, obviously there are fans here that loved him. And, like, to see him go is definitely something that's got to bum out some of the more hardcore fans who have been around the Revs and seen him play and perform. But I wonder if they know it's like, $700,000 in TAM money really can push down a DP that maybe Bob Kraft wouldn't want to buy. But now with that allocated money, it's like, you're going to see someone like that.
If you're a 12-year-old Revs fan, old enough to understand the sport at the very basics, and
like most kids who go to the game with their teams.
Mom, we gave up our best player. Why? Well, Jimmy, sit down. I'm going to tell you. We gave him up, but we got a lot in TAM back.
We got like 700,000 TAM bucks, little Jimmy. What's that?
Well, let's go on MLS's glossary.
Or I can enroll you in TAM University that the MLS is putting on. And it's like, you shouldn't need a degree in MLS BS for you to understand why your team traded your best player.
Yeah, and a lot of MLS fans will probably bash us for saying this, but I honestly feel like it's not necessary. It really is an overcomplication of the situations. I don't want to have to be a sports analyst to have to understand every single ins and outs of a potential trade in the MLS. I don't do well with that in any other sport.
Right.
Like, honestly, like, I don't follow any of that in football, basketball. Like, I just let it happen. Like, oh, dude, that can make sense. But, like, I just want it to be simple. So when I hear things like that, it just doesn't. It strikes like a chord or a nerve. What's the saying? It hits a nerve in me that I just don't enjoy. So I don't know.
And you know what's funny? It's like, even as an American sports fan, where we understand general concepts like draft picks and draft positioning, like, we've already been ingrained in that. Yeah. They didn't even trade for that. They traded for another brand new fictional thing that you have to kind of. And so I think you're right. I think the biggest point is you shouldn't have to be a sports analyst to be a fan.
Right.
And that's unfortunately what I think it's at. But like I said, I think that some restriction is good. Trying to keep everybody healthy is great. I think that the overall ideas they were put in with good intentions, but I don't think the MLS needs to continue to be babied. I don't know. I think it's about time they just kind of
grow up.
Yeah, exactly. I think if we were just get rid of TAM, get rid of GAM, get rid of your fucking glossary, MLS.
Get out of it. I mean, just get rid. I mean, yeah.
Get rid of your fucking glossary.
So annoying. I don't want to be the anti-MLS guy, but it's like every time we talk about these things, it seems like we come off as that. It's just like
I know.
I just want.
We're gonna have. There's so much fodder in this episode for the trolls on Reddit. I can't wait.
Yeah. We read all the comments, dude. We don't care. We still have our opinions.
Well, on that point, I think, it's a pretty good spot to end it for the week.
Thank you for listening, though, and subscribe.
Yo, you think we'd get any, like, if we made, like, one of those E-classes on the MLS, you think we'd get any, like, subscribers? Make some money for the podcast?
Yeah, right.
Hey, if you'd like to learn more about the MLS, we will be running a class. E-seminar.
E-seminar. And what the fuck the MLS is? I'd have to take one. I'd have to take it. I'd have to take the e-seminar. Like, Jesus.
Oh, man, it's so funny. But, all right.
But that's it, everyone. Thank you for listening to another fantastic episode of Culture FC. We talk a little about TAM. We know it's confusing. It's following in a line of a lot of confusing MLS financial rules episodes. But let us know what you think. If we got anything wrong, which we might have, probably. Let us know in the comments. Send us an email. DM us on